Feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
I'm Cherylanne Skonicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. Hello and welcome. This is episode 11 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And I'm sitting here today in my office wearing a pair of adorable shoes that I am about ready to throw out the window. These are shoes that I apparently love to look at in my closet, but I don't like to actually feel them on my feet. Do you have shoes like this? These shoes hurt to sit in. I'm not even standing up. I'm not walking around, and my feet still hurt. Like, this is not okay. And I was thinking about it, how in my 20s, I wore uncomfortable shoes willingly. A lot, actually. But in my 40s, my rule is I have to be able to walk in them and still look cute. I have standards for shoes. I can tell what's going to happen. You all are going to start sending me shoe recommendations, aren't you? I'm going to get these brand recos that I'm not going to be able to live without. So that's cool. Post them in comments. I would love to hear your suggestions, but I'm going to change my shoes after this. And here's why. Shoes are not an area of my life where I need to be uncomfortable. We have choices in shoes, lots and lots of choices. But today we're going to talk about when you do need to be uncomfortable. When maybe you should even choose to be uncomfortable. Really, what it comes down to is when there is an opportunity for you to grow, then we almost always need to lean into the discomfort. And so I'm going to kick this off today with a story because it's really the story from my life where this solidified for me. And it's a good one. It's a story about my daughter who one afternoon earlier this year came into the kitchen and sort of dropped herself onto a stool at the kitchen counter. And she was doing that thing where, you bite at the skin around your nail bed and you're tapping your toe and your knees bobbing up and down 100 miles an hour. And just looking at her was stressing me out. So I knew something was going on. So I asked her, what's up? What's up? What's going on over there? And of course, the answer was nothing. And I thought to myself, really? Because, your fingers are about to bleed. So I sat for a minute in silence, and then she said, well, maybe there's just something. It's just that we have to run this timed mile in gym class tomorrow. And I don't want to come in last. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We don't have to talk about it. So I can't just let that hang there, right? So I jumped in. Now, what you should know is that I have a little bit of credibility in this conversation because for years and years, I ran long distances. It's not something I do these days, but I ran marathons and half marathons. And so she knows that. She knows that running is a part of my story. I said, you sure you don't want to talk about it? She's like, nope. And she walks out of the kitchen. And just 10 seconds later, she turned around and came back in, which is what I love about girls this age, is you still have the opportunity to influence. So she came back in, and I thought to myself, there's really a lot of different directions I could take this conversation, and I'd be on very solid parenting ground, in any of them. We could talk about how winning isn't everything, because her concern was really about not wanting to come in last. We could have talked about how this gym class exercise really wasn't a competition. It was just an opportunity to do your personal best. We could have had a conversation about how to have fun with it, maybe find a friend to run with, or how certainly reassuring her that I would be proud of her no matter what, or even maybe telling her that someone has to finish last. In everything, and to have some empathy and heart based on how she was feeling in this moment for the person who did finish last. But that day, there was this very specific message that came to mind, and it was really all about mindset and a particular opportunity to teach her some mindset work. So I sat down next to her and we sort of unpacked this lesson that we've come back to talk about over and over again, actually, in the months since this happened. And because what I asked her in that moment was, okay, I know that you're concerned about finishing last, but what do you think it's going to feel like while you're running the mile? And I don't really think she'd thought about this, right? So this was a little bit of visioning work. And so she started to explain, what she thought it would feel like. And I wanted to get to one really critical question, which was, are you expecting it to be uncomfortable? Do you have your expectations set accurately? And it turns out, she really didn't. I mean, I think her expectation was it should be pretty easy. It might not be easy for her. Because it wouldn't be easy, she was worried she was going to come in last. So it went something like this. I was like, listen, running a mile isn't going to feel the same in your body as, sitting on the couch for 10 minutes or even walking for 10 minutes would feel. Running that mile, which takes about 10 minutes, could be 15, could be 6, 4, depending on how good you are. It's an experience that's not like any other experience. Your lungs are going to burn. You may get a stitch in your side at some point that's super uncomfortable. Your legs are going to fatigue and start to feel heavy with those steps. And it may actually get worse as you get closer to the finish line. But I told her, if you settle in and you just say, oh, there it is. There's the stitch in my side. I was kind of expecting that to come. There's the fatigue in my legs. There's the burning sensation in my lungs. There's the difficulty taking a breath. Then you can just settle into that and you will keep running. And you are 100% going to finish. And it's very unlikely that you'll be last. Okay, so expecting the discomfort, acknowledging it when it comes, and then running through it was the strategy we wanted to talk about. Here's why. Because on the other hand, if you go into this expecting it to be comfortable, like this should be a piece of cake, then when that discomfort shows up, you'll be totally caught off guard. You'll diagnose it as something being wrong, right? Like, oh, I have a stitch in my side. It means I should stop. And then you'll stop running. And if you stop, two things could happen. You might not finish at all, right? Or all of the stopping and starting and stopping and starting is going to make it take longer, in which case you're going to push closer to finishing last. So I let all that sink in, right? Because what I was trying to get clear to her was, I want you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I want you to wrap your mind around, this is not going to feel good, but it's only going to take about 10 minutes. We talked about all of this and I looked at her and I was like, do you think you can do that? And she was not impressed at the moment with my approach. She looked at me like, expect it to be uncomfortable. That's it. That's all you've got, Yep, that was it. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And she's like, and if I do that, I won't be last. It's like, well, no, you won't be last. She's like, all right, well, burning lungs, here I come, right? And I think she honestly rolled her eyes at that point before she left the room. She goes to school the next morning. We don't talk about it again. And she comes home that evening and she practically saunters into the house. So this was my first clue, right? So I looked at her and I asked, how'd it go? And I think I was like making a salad at the counter. So I'm trying to be really chill and nonchalant about this. And she comes over and like takes me by both shoulders and says, Mom, 7:59. I finished in 7:59. I wasn't even close to finishing last. She gave me this big hug and she like walks out of the room. It was an awesome moment. For her, for me, I was like, score one for Mom, right? On the mindset coaching, because that's really what this was. It wasn't her cardiovascular fitness that got her across that mile line in under 8 minutes. It was 100% her mindset. She didn't freak out when it got uncomfortable. And that's what most of us do. Most of us go into a situation and we think this is easy for everyone else. And when it feels uncomfortable for us, we think something is wrong with us and then we quit. But here's the catch. Growth, places where we are putting ourselves in that situation to get better, to learn something new, to grow, that is almost always uncomfortable. We're trying new things. We're metaphorically using new muscles, right? We're building new skills. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. It burns. And honestly, we may never like it. I don't like being a beginner. You probably don't either. But when we go in knowing that that's normal, expecting that discomfort, we can absolutely withstand it.
Feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
So I want to pull 3 points out of this story that you can take with you and apply to those situations where you need to be uncomfortable in order to grow. Okay? Here's the first one. When you are growing, discomfort is normal. You should expect it. In fact, envision it sort of in technicolor. Just like I had Ella do about how her legs were going to feel, how her lungs were going to feel, the stitch in her side. Really think about what might be uncomfortable. What am I not going to like about this situation? Maybe have conversations with other people who have done it so that they can tell you what it felt like for them when they were new to whatever the thing is. So we want to sort of normalize discomfort so that you can go in expecting it. The second point that I want to pull out is the discomfort is temporary. It will ease up over time. Now, this is very important because I have talked before about toughing it out. And I made the point that toughing it out is not necessary, right? We're not supposed to tough it out. So I want to draw a distinction here that's a very important one between these 2 points because it could get cloudy. Toughing it out is when you have no idea when the discomfort is going to end, right? You're just in it for the long haul. You're sort of martyring your way through it, and it's purposeless. You know, you're potentially in a situation you've been in for a long time and it is not getting better. That's toughing it out. This is intentionally leaning into discomfort because it's temporary and it's a vehicle to growth. They're very different. Okay, so when you are growing, discomfort is temporary. It will get easier with time and with experience, and that is how you know you can survive it. Which brings me to the third point. When we are growing, discomfort is survivable, right? You will not die. Now, here's why on some level you think you're going to die, right? Let's say, let's just use running again. Let's say you're not a runner and you decide you are going to use running because it's going to feel good. You're going to be de-stressed. You're going to get in shape and you go out and decide to run 5 miles. I promise you, you will think you're going to die, right? Because all of the signals from your body will be telling you, alert, alert, this is wrong, right? We are way out of control limits. Nothing is feeling normal. We are going to die. Now, here's what's happening. There is this deep part of your brain, actually most of your brain. We often refer to this as your lizard brain. And it is the thing sending you the signals that you are going to die. Because to your lizard brain, everything is life and death. Everything is fight or flight, right? Survive or die. So anything that feels like fear or discomfort or newness gets categorized in the die camp, right? And everything that is associated with normalcy, status quo, the way we've always done things, that gets associated with life. Like we can survive because we're comfortable. But you won't actually die, right? And you know that in the part of your brain that is evolved, which is the prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain knows that you're not actually going to die. So you need to be in dialogue sort of between those two things when you're growing. Wow, I feel terrified of this because on some level, this very ancient part of my brain is telling me if I do it, I'm going to die. But I know better. And so I need to calm that part of myself down so that I can continue to take action. And here's what happens. When you make peace with the discomfort, when you lean into it because you know it's normal and because you know it will be temporary, and because, importantly, you're confident that you're not going to die, then you grow. And when you grow, your confidence increases, right? And just like my daughter, you'll be sauntering into the room saying, I've got this, because you will. I see this pattern all the time with the women in my programs. Let's say it's an aspiring entrepreneur who has a very small business that she's trying to get off the ground. And she comes in, and the thing that is just shutting her down is she does not want to make sales calls. Now listen, in entrepreneurship, sales is the lifeblood of your business. You can't be an entrepreneur without knowing how to communicate the value of your offering. But most new entrepreneurs are terrified of being in those conversations. They're very uncomfortable. So we go through this same process, right? Expect discomfort. Normalize it. Realize it's temporary. This will ease up over time, and it is definitely survivable. You will not die. And so what happens is that aspiring entrepreneur starts to have those conversations with prospective clients or customers, and it's very uncomfortable. But she gets better at it, and it gets easier and less uncomfortable. And eventually she masters it, and one day she saunters into the room like, I've got this. Same pattern with an aspiring author or blogger or content producer, right? Who has to publish their work, and they have all these ideas in their head, but they're terrified to put them out in the world. And they fight it, and it's uncomfortable, and they don't want to do it. But as they take that action over and over again, they grow. And actually, they come to love it. They come to love the feeling of sharing those thoughts with the world. I even see it with women who, maybe need to learn to say no to things, to draw boundaries. And they fight that. It's very uncomfortable to say no. It's very uncomfortable to disappoint someone. And so they fight it, and it's uncomfortable, and they push through it. But once they have proven to themselves that they're not going to die, then they cherish the capability, because it's the thing that allows them to curate their time. All of these examples, and I could go on and on because this is a pattern that we really just see a ton in my work, is all of these have those three things in common. They lean into the discomfort because they know it's normal, right? They expect it because we set those expectations up front. It's temporary, so they know it's not going to stay that way forever, and it's survivable. They have to be in dialogue between that, live or die mechanism and a much more nuanced perspective on how to deal with fear. So whether it's 10 rejections from hiring managers in companies you want to work for, or 50 auditions for the actress where she doesn't get the part, or the 100 million failed attempts at a pull-up before you make it happen, we can get comfortable being uncomfortable. And when we do, we grow. I want you to think about, where is a place in your life that you know you want to grow? And I want you to ask yourself, what would be different if I just expected it to be uncomfortable? And I remembered it was temporary, and I realized I wasn't going to die. What actions would you take that are different than what you're doing today? And I want you to try them. Okay? And listen, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. While you are off trying new things and getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, something very predictable is going to happen. There's a voice in your head that is going to start working overtime, and she's not very nice. So this is your inner critic, and your inner critic is going to stand up on a chair with a megaphone and begin shouting at you because our inner critics hate growth. So what we're going to do in the next episode is we are going to tune into that voice of your inner critic. We're going to understand her a little better. And I'm going to help you figure out what she's really trying to tell you. And I think you might be surprised. That inner critic is a voice that a lot of us have come to know very well. We hear her a lot. But it's my experience that we misunderstand or misinterpret the message most of the time. So we're going to pull that apart next time and give you some new ways of thinking about it. And that's it for today. If you liked this idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, tell me. I would love to hear from you. Best way to do that is to take about 5 seconds and rate the show by scrolling down in your app on your phone till you see those stars, choosing your rating, and then clicking submit. It literally takes about 3 seconds. It's a great reminder to me that these messages are landing and that you're enjoying this experience. It's also super important because that's how we get this show in front of more people and we can start to have a bigger impact and really spread the message. So I value your help with that. Thanks so much for doing it. And until next time, go be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.